What's up, Gator Nation? Zach Abalverde and Nick Del Toro here, coming to you from the Swamp, following Florida's home opener, a 49-7 win over McNeese. The Gators almost had the shutout, Nick. Turnover late allowed the Cowboys to get a late score, but all around, offense and defense, great performance. Special teams, still some things to work on. But all in all, this was a confidence-building game that the Gators needed after their season-opening loss at Utah, and with their SEC opener coming up next weekend right back here against Tennessee. We'll get into that, Nick, but your impressions of this game tonight?
I will accept the game-changer coordinator job if it becomes available. I'll take it on. Listen, this is a bad football team Florida played, but you do what you need to do. You don't go out there and scrape by. This wasn't a FAU overtime game from years ago. We used to say this about Will Greer. Like, Will Greer, and when he was in high school, played some of the worst competition I've ever seen, but he dominated it. Mm-hmm. You can only play who they put on the schedule.
That's right.
Florida played a bad team, McNeese, and dominated them. Offense, defense, dominated the game. I mean, looking at these stats, Florida had 33 first downs, rushed for 327 yards, passed for 233. Outside of a couple miscues, really sound game. Cleaned up the procedural penalties, which I was harping on, probably annoying you guys all week talking about it. But clean that stuff up. You're going to face a much better opponent next week. But I think what this game does is give you confidence, gets you feeling good. You hadn't won a game. You hadn't had a club dub.
10 months.
Hadn't had a club dub in the locker room in 4 straight games. So just getting that feeling of being able to celebrate, and it's not hanging heads in a locker room after a game, I think that does a lot for the confidence. With the Tennessee team, it didn't look great on Saturday, coming into what I think is going to be a hostile environment next week in the Swamp.
I will say it filled up pretty nicely on these two sides. It was.
Shout out to the students. I'm always hard on the late arriving, early leaving.
They weren't late arriving today, man. They showed up.
Students showed up, showed out. So props to you guys if you're listening and watching this.
Yeah, new LED lights tonight that we got to see for the first time in action. And, Nick mentioned better offensive line play, just a cleaner performance from Florida. I think another really, really encouraging sign was the rushing production. Montrell Johnson goes over 100 yards. They had a bunch of different guys that got in the end zone on the ground. You saw Trayon Webb have his first career score, 2 actually, and then Trevor Etienne had a great touchdown run as well. So I think it was important after 13 rushing yards, although that was sack yardage factored in, Billy. They had the type of rushing performance that you need. 327 yards total on the ground, 560 total. And then on the defensive side, they hold them to 112 yards. And again, would have had a shutout if not for that late turnover. You saw a lot of young guys play on defense. This was an opportunity for several freshmen. Eugene Wilson gets his first career start. We saw some trickery there with him in the red zone. Just a lot to like from this game. A 99-yard touchdown drive from Graham Mertz in the offense. It's the second week in a row where they've had something like that. 98 yards last week in Salt Lake City. So some things that they can build on. But as Napier made it clear in the post-game presser, Nick, things get real next week because SEC play starts.
Florida scored a touchdown on their first 7 offensive possessions.
Yeah. It
wasn't until the fourth quarter that I got to see my guy Jeremy Cross drop.
Yeah, and you also got to see your guy Max Brown.
Yeah.
His debut.
Went to the bullpen. Billy came out, went to the bullpen, bring in the righty. I think it's important. Everyone's getting on me. Listen, I'll knock on some wood here. I think it's important. If Jack Miller, even if Jack Miller does play, his experience is slightly more than the other 2 guys.
Now both of them have played approximately 1 game in a Florida uniform.
There you go. Max Brown, plays 2 sports, got his varsity letter today for getting in a game. I think it's important to get those guys game reps. And you can get as many practice reps as you want. And it's funny because there's coach speaking. It's like, well, you can't really simulate the game. And then when you ask about how important is it to get these guys in the game, it's, well, they get a ton of practice reps. But you can't simulate a game. So getting Max out there in front of a crowd like this, getting Mike DeLeon snaps. He's an older guy, but still really only has 3 passing attempts in, seems like 6 years of college. I think it's important to get those guys just the feel of it. What does it feel like to have to go out there in a huddle and call a play with 80,000, 70,000, 60,000 people staring at you? I think that's important for Florida moving forward, just to get those younger guys reps, and especially the quarterbacks.
Few things to leave you guys with. I do want to mention it was not a completely clean night up front. There was one false start penalty where the entire offensive line jumped.
Hey, baby, 5 equals 1. It's not just a saying. If we're going to jump off sides, let's all jump off sides.
But one encouraging sign from the offensive line was the UF debut of Lindell Hudson. I thought he looked great. You can see why Billy has continued to mention him. Revealed on his Gator Talk show that he got banged up in pregame warmups before the Utah game and was unavailable in that matchup. So this is his first time that he was able to play. I thought he looked good. And on the defensive side of the ball, Jamari Lyons. He comes up with the safety, but he's really looked good in the first 2 weeks. I think he's a guy that you could see more in that defensive line rotation. And final thing, we mentioned the fumble late that allowed McNeese to score, man. Gators were up big, obviously had the game in hand, but Billy was coaching hard on that sideline. He was not happy about that turnover, not happy about the lack of urgency from Max Brown. So some teachable moments in this game was what you needed in a matchup like this.
Yeah, this game, I don't know if it was ever going to be in question. McNeese does get a sneaky backdoor cover at the end of it. But I think that's important. And if you're a coach, especially in a game that it has been well decided for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes at that point, you have to coach the guys who are in when it's 40-0. You have to coach them as if, hey, this is the start of a new game. Because these guys haven't played yet, and we can't just say, it's cool that you fumbled that. Don't worry about it. The game was over. You have to use that as a teachable moment. So that's something I really like to see from Billy Napier, from the coaching staff, in a game that, for everyone else except for the guys who were in it at that time, which might have had you guys like pulling up FloridaGators.com, looking for a roster. Who is this guy? I think it's important to coach them. And also, number 27 tonight, I looked up and I was like, about Perkins left. Dijon Johnson switched from 26 to 27.
Oh, okay.
So Dijon getting in the game there late too.
Jumped on that number quick.
Jumped on, a day's notice.
Hope they change that number on the special teams, coach.
Oh, jeez.
Well, the Gators get a win in the Swamp, improve to 1-1 on the season, and will look to get above 500. Next Saturday, Tennessee comes to town. Gators haven't lost at home to the Vols since 2003.
Would be 10 straight with the win this year. Big rivalry week, getting Tennessee down to the Swamp. Florida hasn't had a SEC win since Missouri?
South Carolina. Their last time here.
South Carolina. It's going to be a huge game. We're going to have starting on Monday, we're going to have a deal for you guys. Make sure you take advantage of that. It's rivalry week, which means we're slashing prices. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, get this sent straight to your phone, to your email as soon as we go live or post any videos.
Yes, and of course, as always, stay locked with GatorsOnline.com for all of our post-game coverage, recruiting reaction, all the stuff as we break down what was a feel-good game in the Swamp, 49-7 over McNeese. Nick and I will be back with you guys later this week to preview the SEC opener against the Tennessee Vols. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Allen.